So I'm here with Danny Dollars. I wanted to take the time, to congratulate you for all the success you've been having on the iTunes chart, eating lunch in a Benz with a stripper and her friend. Big girls need love too. You
Thank
know,
you, brother. I appreciate you, man.
definitely.
Appreciate you.
Are you from Detroit originally?
Yeah, so around the area, right now I live outside, lived in the city limits, moved out. I probably live about a mile away now, but pretty much my whole life has lived here. Besides like one summer I've lived in Chicago for like 3 months, but
Yeah, that's what
other than that,
I'm.
Detroit area or Detroit my whole life. So,
Definitely. What was it like growing up in Detroit?
I mean, wasn't bad to me. I never, I can't say I had any issues. I always had more issues when I lived in the suburbs, which is kind of weird. Like I'll use this as an example. Uh, Even through my adult life, I used to live in Detroit, off of Joy Road. Lived there for about 8 years. Never had any type of issue. It was, it was like a rundown block, but I never had my car broken into. No one ever messed with my house. We moved out of that area because I wanted my kid to go to a better school. And it was like my first day moving out of Detroit. I moved to the suburbs. I'm sleeping. It's like 3 in the morning. I hear my car alarm going off and someone's breaking into my car. I'm like, what the fuck? Like over here? Like, I don't know. So that's like the little things I notice. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. It's funny like how life can work like that. Sometimes you would think a nicer area is is less likely for that to happen.
Yeah.
um yeah. Um being from Detroit, who were some of the artists that you were influenced by growing up?
A lot of like, I listened a lot. I grew up on a lot of stuff, man. So like my first favorite rapper was Eazy-E.
Okay.
And I'll say that comes, I mean, I was super young. I think I was probably like 4. So I just remember my mom used to listen to Eazy-E and Too Short and stuff like that. And I really loved the sound of it. You know what I'm saying? And then it's funny, even like LL Cool J, Brenda Got a Big Old Butt. You remember that? So she would listen to like all that stuff and it just really made me fall in love with rap in general. And then I got a little bit older and I found the Insane Clown Posse.
Okay.
If you've ever heard of them. So
Of
yeah,
course.
like
Legends.
definitely they were like a huge influence on like the as far as the aspect of doing what you want to do and be you, you know what I'm saying? And don't be afraid to be different from everybody else because they were kind of like I think like the first rappers that really did that, you know what I'm saying? Like they put on the face paint and they got a lot of hate for it in the beginning. Now they're starting to get their flowers,
Right.
but they really were the ones that like I guess pushed me, And Isham, if you've ever heard of Isham.
Yeah, yeah, man. Legend.
Isham was another one. Fucking loved Isham, man. Like,
Yeah, like I grew up in Chicago, so being in the Midwest, like I got like a lot of love for Esham and Insane Clown Posse. I remember being a kid, listening to Insane Clown Posse. I loved it because of just the shock value of it. Like I,
yep,
it was like totally different than all the other type of music that was popular at the time. Because like Master P was popular, but it was an alternative space for and I appreciated them. And when I got older, I got to meet Shaggy. I thought that was really cool.
I 100% agree with you. And you bring up Master P. That's another rapper that I love. No Limit, man. Like, No Limit was and Cash Money. Actually, it's funny.
Yeah,
I'm wearing a Cash Money t-shirt right now.
yeah, like when we were
Um,
I don't know how old you are, but like when I was growing up, like those were the artists that were super popular. They had these huge movements, and
oh yeah,
yeah, it was like you had people that were divided about the Cash Money, No Limit thing. It was
oh
pretty
yeah.
wild times.
I was both them and 3 6 Mafia.
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
loved all the South in general, man. Like I thought the South at that time was just really killing it. I mean, the South has been killing it for years, but at that point, I think that was like my peak defining like South music, I
Yeah.
mean, you had Outkast doing their thing, and like they were like the kind of like the weird ones of the South, but like so unique but dope. And then you had like a lot of the crunk stuff, like 3 6, and I wouldn't. I'd say Master P is maybe like the original trap rapper, you know?
I was a huge fan of Goody Mob. I love
Hoodie Mob, yes.
I love the 3 6 Mafia, just like the collaboration they did with ICP. It was like
Classic.
Violent J says, "I'll stab you with an umbrella, then open it. You look like a diseased Ethiopian." Yeah, so classic.
It's
Um,
so good, man.
when did you decide you wanted to rap?
Um, was something like I said, when I first started listening to rap, it was like I want to do this. I remember being like 5 years old, 6 years old, man, reciting Easy E lyrics to myself and like never really like knowing how to write my own stuff, but it was like just like always rapping Easy, like this is something I want to do, you know? And then just got a little bit older and got comfortable with doing it. Now it's like second nature, you know? It's always breaking out. It's like they say the first step is the hardest of breaking out to be comfortable,
Yeah,
if that makes sense. So like that's always like the hardest part. But yeah, like when I was young, I mean, I guess you could say I probably wanted to rap when I was like 6 years old, 5, 6 years old.
definitely. And
Just I respect the craft, you know, like even like the simple like a lot of people would look at Eazy-E and be like, "Oh, he's not a great rapper because it was real simple." Like some people like the technical stuff, but in my opinion, I'd say he's one of the greatest because it's more about like a lot of things. It's a whole package deal with me. You know, he had a good image.
yeah.
He had a great voice, like it undeniably, in my opinion, one of the best voices in hip hop ever. Like, because you knew, like when you hear it, you'd be like, "That's Easy E," you know?
Oh yeah, man, you have to give him like so much respect because I feel like all these artists like pretty much branched from him, like basically
Yeah.
taking the initiative to be an entrepreneur. You wouldn't really know like who the DOC was. You wouldn't know like who
Yep.
Dre is. You would know who Eminem is. 50 Cent. Like all these artists, like basically come from that tree of Easy. So
It's
it's like
kind of crazy that you mention it like that because that's the truth. Like, if obviously Dre discovered Eminem, which was way on the other side of the country, and that wouldn't have happened if Easy E didn't. Obviously Dre and Easy were both a big part of each other's history,
yeah,
but like you said, Easy E like is kind of that tree that
yeah, yeah, yeah. When you started rapping, like like what were like some of the initial obstacles you faced?
um money. That's people don't realize how much money a lot of people I think that they just get in the game and you can be good or creative. It don't matter how creative you are if you ain't got no money to push it. Like that's a big obstacle, you know. Still, even to this day, like you got to have more money now than ever to push your shit with the internet and there's so many artists in that market now that like you really have to like even if you do stand out, sometimes it's hard to stand out when you stand out, if that makes sense. You could stand out in a crowd, but if you're so different, like I'll use this as an example. Like I've done shows and I'll do shows with artists and there'll be a lot of the same type of artists.
Right.
And then I'm doing my thing. So sometimes, yeah, I stand out, but then sometimes it's like people are like, what is this? Like what is they don't get it, sometimes. So
Yeah,
like
I
sometimes
understand that.
standing out too much can be even an obstacle because sometimes people maybe just it's hard to explain, man, but they just kind
No,
of
I
like
get it. It's like a lot of times, like, people aren't familiar with you, even if like, you make good music or it's not necessarily what their brain is ready for. You could be ahead of your time,
yes.
or like, people like, that don't necessarily get it. And, like, I think there's a lot of creative artists and stuff that have kind of broken those barriers and still breaking those barriers. And like I could see like how that could be an issue. Because like, one of the things I appreciate about your music though is like, I don't feel like I can compare you to anyone else. You're not really like swagger jacking. There's a lot of artists and stuff, and everything where they're just like emulations of like
Yeah,
different successful artists already, like, and stuff. They're just a clone of Jay-Z, like
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot, to be honest with you, because I pride myself on being me, and my authentic self. I think like every artist should be authentically themselves. It's okay to be inspired, but not, like you said, take a whole style from someone. Like, I'm inspired by artists. I'm inspired by a lot of artists, a lot of different music, but um, at the end of the day, I always pride myself on being authentically me and saying what I want to say. And you could look back at my old music from even 10, 12 years ago, and you could see like obviously I've grown a lot as an artist since then, but you could see I was always trying to do my own thing and like just like random titles, songs.
It's actually really refreshing because I feel like, a lot of times and stuff, there's a lot of artists that are very similar to like other artists. Like that lane's already taken. Like, someone's already doing that. Like, someone, like Jay-Z is already, he's already there. Kanye West
you know,
already seen that,
and I think what happens with that, and this is what I notice, is I think we'll use this as an example. You heard of the rapper Playboy Cardi?
Yeah, of course.
So he's obviously popular. Juice World, very popular. I love Juice World. I think he's a great artist, but a lot of artists try to emulate like that because it's what's popular.
Right,
And they think they're going to get rich and famous off of it. So like you'll have like even like I've done shows where there's like 20 Little Peep ripoffs.
right.
And like again, it's no disrespect to Lil Peep or even them artists, but I think a lot of people just haven't really, I think they see other people do it and they want to jump in and be like, I want to be like that person and automatically rather than being like, oh, I'm inspired by him. But they just, like you said, take everything and want to sound exactly like that because they think it's like a get rich quick scheme or something, you know?
Yeah.
If I sound like Jay-Z, I'm gonna get rich. Or,
Yeah, like a lot of times you see people like jumping on other people's waves, like and like I can honestly say, like, what I mean, you're creating your own wave, and like, I think that's really refreshing in like today's day and age. Do you feel like, like especially like, the current climate of hip hop, like, that there's too much like lack of originality for, especially radio?
I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. And like I just feel like a lot of stuff it goes back down to being authentically themselves. I'm not saying I don't want to say there's because there is a lot of a
Yeah,
creative
there are.
artists
There
too.
are. There are.
There's a lot of
I
very
would say like
creative
they're in the
artists
minority. I would, what I mean? I think like, there's a minority of artists that are being original
for
and like
sure.
um not mimicking like, other artists that are successful. I
It,
think like,
it,
there is not like, I think common in today's like, like music climate. There seems to be like, a lot of like recycled ideas where people
for
are
sure.
taking like, things that have already been done previously, like, that we've seen with other artists, or, just like kind of trying to mimic the sounds of what already is popular.
And what's funny with that you say that is all across the board. And when I say that, what I mean by that is that mimicking thing is across the board in every because I feel like there's different styles of hip hop. Like you got the horrorcore, you got
Yeah,
the pop rap, you got the
yeah, it's
all
vast.
across the board.
Yeah,
And I've done shows with people from street rappers. I've done shows with people from like horrorcore shows. And a lot of times, like say, I'll use this as an example. You go to the horrorcore show and everybody paints their face like ICP and
right.
tries to be like ICP. And like, it's okay if you paint your face, but at least get your like own original
Yeah.
idea instead of going on stage with Shaggy Two Dope face paint on. And you know what I
No,
mean?
No, I
And it
totally
kind of
agree.
makes the scene feel flooded because, like you said, it's you're just literally taking. Like I actually literally saw a guy had his gimmick was Joker cards, and I'm like, that's ICP's thing.
Yeah, yeah. What genre of hip hop would you say you were? Because you mentioned, horrorcore. Would you consider yourself a horrorcore artist?
I wouldn't. It's hard for me to say because I don't know, man. I just like I said, I like to make people laugh a
Yeah.
lot or be. I feel like, especially in the world today, it's such a dark place. I feel like humor is the best way to kind of like step away from that darkness. You know, there's so much crazy stuff. Like I'll use this as an example, like uh political time is it brings out the ugliest of people, man. Like no one can agree to disagree anymore. You remember, I mean, you're old enough to remember like when we were kids growing up, it was like people had different political opinions. They could be friends
Right.
and still get along. Now it's like it's crazy because I see everyone fight and it's like the world is an ugly place, man. Like everyone wants to fight and there's more division than ever, man. So I think like kind of like comedic relief is like a way to try to step away from that. And me personally, that's what I try to put in my music is like a little comedic relief and hopefully maybe people can laugh together or something, you know, or if they're not laughing with it, they can laugh at me and be like, he looks stupid or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you want to laugh at with the music or you want to laugh at it with or at it. That's what my goal is. So I'd say like maybe comedic rap.
That's
That would probably be the best way to put it, like comedy, you know? So I've always liked comedy. I guess there is other comedy rappers like Little Dicky and stuff, but before I even heard of fucking Little Dicky, like I was inspired by guys like Bizarre from D12, you know, and his like out of pocket comedic shock rap, you know?
yeah. Man, I think like comedy rap, I appreciate it. Like I think it's a place for that. I love Little Dicky and Bizarre. Like I've interviewed him before. Uh you talked about the importance of unity, and you mentioned just how like polarized we are. Do you feel like that comedy brings people together?
Uh yeah, I mean if we could all laugh together, you know, I mean it depends. That today in today's day and age it is kind of weird because you know, like we'll see Dave Chappelle for an example. I think Dave Chappelle's funny. I don't think he means harm when he does any like certain jokes. There's a fine line of like hateful comedy and like to be in a hateful way or just to make us laugh. Like we'll use I guess here's a better example, South Park.
Yeah.
South Park is one of those shows you can watch and you can be like, "Wow, I should be able to laugh at myself." You know, they don't just pick at one type of person. They kind of pick at everything and take what is the worst of that thing or person and kind of laugh at it, you know? Like this is what we're gonna poke fun at, but they do it in a non man, I was just talking about this with someone else the other day. Not hateful way. It's like a oh my God, the word is slipping my mind right now. But you get what I'm saying? Like there's a way like
Dude, definitely. It's it's very not mean-spirited, you know.
not mean-spirited. Yes, exactly. It's like it's for fun. Hey, if you were to go make fun of me on there in a funny way and you're not being hateful about it, like, you know what I'm saying? You could tell when something has more like a hateful energy towards it compared to lighthearted, you know, mean-spirited or lighthearted. You could see, I mean, I can read that at least. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I can personally read that kind of stuff when I see someone doing certain types of jokes, you know?
Right. Yeah, yeah. I definitely think yeah, I agree. I think though we live in like very sensitive times though, where a lot of times people could tell a joke and even if you had like the best of intentions, like, sometimes like people will take it the wrong
Take
way.
it serious.
Or like, if you're maybe like, of a certain group, like, that the joke is about, like, maybe like, you'll feel like, offended by it. Has there ever been a time like, where people were offended by like some of your music, maybe your lyrics?
Um, when I'd say when I first started doing like what I'm doing, like trying to really in the beginning when I was first trying to find my, like build my trying to grow as an artist but find my exact niche. Um there was certain rhymes. It was kind of inspired, I guess we'll say, by like Eminem. Like, he had like a lot of the womanizing lyrics, maybe, or not the womanizing lyrics. I'm sorry. I guess it's fuck, man, I'm at a loss of words right now.
Misogynistic.
Misogynistic words, or you know, when I would say that, like certain things, I think some people might have took those wrong.
Right.
Um, and now I make sure I don't put anything like that. Like, I mean, there's a difference between like eat lunch with a stripper and you know what I'm saying? I try to be more lighthearted with it. Like, obviously, I was younger then, so I was still trying to find and it was more like, oh, I'm just going to do the shock rap with the comedic value. It was still like my brand of it, but I guess that would probably be the most offensive thing. And, now like I would never rap about duct taping a woman, like because like I never believed that it was a right thing, but like I don't know, it's hard to explain, man. It's music, it's like a movie is what I've always tried to explain to people. Sometimes like if you watch a horror movie, do you think that they're really killing people? No,
Right.
it's for entertainment values. Certain people find certain things entertaining, but I guess even since then, like maybe I found that stuff entertaining as a teenager, but now it's like it's not really something that because there are actually women who have to deal with stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if who knows if I guess that is a sensitive subject. If say a woman is a fan and she listens to this song and you're talking about duct taping women and punching her, like
Right.
it. I can understand why something like that is a sensitive thing. Even though like my tone was trying to be goofy, some people don't really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can understand why someone like, would be affected by that. Like,
Yeah,
especially if like you've experienced domestic violence before in the past. And,
exactly.
my favorite artists though have similar lyrics. Like I think Eminem, like, is pretty guilty of that. Everybody would pretty much agree. Like, he has like, songs like
Yep.
where he's doing horrible things to women, like where I wouldn't actually think he would do those things.
Yeah.
And I can understand like, that he's like talking from like, just like
A perspective of a character.
yeah.
And that's how I always looked at it too. But, you know, sometimes you grow away from those and you grow away from that.
Yeah.
And I think Eminem grew away from that actually big time. Obviously he did the Death of Slim Shady recently, but that was like to put that character back out and say, hey, I'm killing this character. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with some of the newer Eminem music. It's
Yeah.
definitely way different than what the Eminem from the 90s and
Uh,
early 2000s.
right. But like as far as like the shock value songs, I still see like, the lyrical content, like, is not as aggressive, like, as the point, like it was like
Oh
early
yeah.
on. He would just say,
Oh
and I
yeah.
feel like you could get away with so much more than because like it seemed
For
like
sure.
I look at movies like now, like, that I feel like they couldn't be done today.
Yeah.
You know,
Uh what was those? Man, I was just watching something that I from the 90s that I thought I want to say maybe Scary Movie.
okay.
There was something I was watching and I was like, man, this would never fly if this got put out now.
Yeah.
Or man, what was it? I don't remember. It was a comedy movie from the 90s, but I was like, man, this scene would not fly now. Like,
Yeah.
even though I think it's funny, and people that grew up on it think it's funny, it just wouldn't fly now?
Right. Yeah. Like I think we live in a time like where you have to be a lot more political correct. And, it just seems like, like people will get canceled if they like cross a line, like, so even though like
Oh
I don't
yeah.
really believe in like in cancel, but you will outrage a lot of people, probably like, inspire uh critics, like you make people upset, maybe possibly lose income. Like, like we've seen it with like artists in the past, who have
Oh
made
yeah.
like comments sometimes that like, people have found to be offensive. But I feel like, that we had like maybe just as far as like a lot more ability to laugh at things in the 90s and not take things as serious, like just see it for like a film. And maybe people were upset because we didn't have like, social
Do you
media.
think
There would have been like, a lot more people who were outraged at the time.
I was
And
about to say, do you think it's because the internet?
yeah, I think the internet plays a huge part because like maybe like, those people didn't have voices and the internet has given everyone a voice.
For
So
sure. Yeah, the internet's changed a lot, man. Like I don't know about you. You said you grew up in Chicago,
right.
but like obviously me growing up in Detroit area and Detroit and around Detroit, I personally never seen like I always thought growing up in the 90s in the early 2000s, like I was like racism thing, we'll use this thing as like this, like racism didn't exist anymore
Mm.
because I never saw it. And I'm saying like I've been around black people, white people, Asian people, Mexican people, and I've never heard anybody like racist remarks. It was like always like I thought, okay, at that time as a kid, I always thought, okay, racism was a part of the past.
Mm.
And it's crazy because with the internet now, I feel like it's just as bad as it was. Like, I mean, I wasn't alive back then, but like you see it, like I see it more, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize this existed no more. Maybe it's just like in our small community. I don't know how it was in Chicago, but in the community around here, like, we'll use this as an example. When I went to Detroit schools, there was literally three other white kids. It was my sister and two other white kids, and that's it. But there was never any type of like animosity towards anybody. You know what I'm saying? And then when I moved to the suburbs, it was like there was maybe less black kids, but there wasn't any like uh racism towards them, you know? And then like now on the internet you see it so much and it's crazy to me.
Yeah, I'm surprised by the amount of racist people, like the amount of racist remarks. Like, I do like a lot of like content, and, like people will leave, some very racist remarks, like you wouldn't believe sometimes, like, and like ridiculous like comments that people will post in a public forum, sometimes and stuff like, not even like anonymously. And
Yeah.
like, that people can be so unabashedly proud of their racism and like you're
Yeah,
not
it's
ashamed.
wild.
Yeah. But like when I was younger, I think I think I was pretty much naive. I think like, I thought there were less racist people in the world than there
Yeah,
are. I thought like, that maybe like we were moving towards a better climate. I was certainly aware of like, people who would say like racist things at a time, but now I'm not so sure
man.
about. I mean, I think like the world, like obviously things have gotten better in some regards, but then like, there's a lot of things that make me question, like, has it gotten really like a lot better? Because
No, for sure. Dude, I 100% agree with you. Like maybe I was naive and just didn't. I never noticed it as a kid though. Like I feel like the internet, maybe people just feel fucking like I feel like maybe people feel like they can say whatever on the internet and get away with it because there's no consequences. It's not like you could just punch someone in the face for saying something because they're behind a computer screen, maybe. I don't
and
know,
also
but
like one of the things that I'm really big on is like having empathy for people. And I think like sometimes that I don't know people's like personal experiences that made them that way. And like a lot
yeah,
of times, like, because I went to a predominantly white college, and I would say like, like a lot of the people that lived on my floor, having like conversations with them before, like they had never really met like any black people. So like I was the first real black person that they had known. And like, they might have had some racist thoughts. And like, by like me being there, were kind of like, to expel like, some of the stereotypes that they had, or like, ideas and stuff, everything that they had. And like, I think like I see that a lot on the internet, whereas like people like maybe they've never like, met black people or like, interacted with like, people of like other cultures. And like, growing
yeah.
up in a city like Detroit or Chicago, which is like melting pots, you're exposed to like other people. So like, race isn't like, so much of a factor.
It's crazy because I've always found it weird to think that one or maybe a couple bad apples could ruin it for everybody. You know what I'm saying? And that goes for every race. Like, um, I see things about white people and it's like, man, it sucks because there's certain people that are fucking idiots and believe in like, oh, like they're the only ones that should exist. And it gives all white people a bad name, or like black people. There's certain, maybe a couple bad, someone might have had a bad encounter with one black person, and then all of a sudden they think all black people are just terrible, or you know what I'm saying? It's like, I really feel like that's a weird mentality to have, like, oh, because I wasn't treated right by this person, like we're just gonna hate every one of them because you does that make sense what I'm saying?
No, 100%.
You know, like
I see
you
that
should really judge a person by who they are,
most definitely. I think that's what
not by their
Martin Luther
color
King
or
Jr. was fighting for. He has that famous quote. He was like, "We must learn to live together as brothers, or we will all perish together as fools." This is, what he said. So,
and you know what? I agree with that, man. Like I hate that's one thing, like I don't get into politics for that reason, man. Because like I said, man, I feel politics are one thing and not even I'm not even saying like on the race thing, but it just causes so much division.
right,
And you got all these people fighting with each other and it's nasty and it's nastier than ever now, man. Like
yeah,
it's insane. Like I don't know how we got to this point in fucking the world, but it's crazy. Like
for sure. What do you think, can be done, to bring about more unity in the world?
I don't know, man. Honestly, I really don't personally know, but I hope that they can do something. Maybe instead of splitting it like two parties, because there's always like this red party, blue party thing, you know? Maybe come together and do something to try to get people like and meet in the middle. You know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to meet in the middle everywhere, but I just feel like I really don't know. I mean, I'm not a politician, so I can tell you, but there's
Yeah,
people more educated in certain things, but
I
I
think it
just
starts with great artists, man. I think really artists have an extreme amount of power. And we've seen that before. People like Michael Jackson,
oh yeah,
loved by
Tupac,
yeah, Tupac.
Tupac and Michael Jackson, those are two perfect examples.
Yeah. And I think making songs that show us that we have a common unity. And I think that artists are able to do that, man. I think you definitely have that potential,
Thank you, man.
for
Yeah,
sure.
we tried to do that with we did something with Big Girls Need Love too. It
Yeah.
was like let's try to bring two different worlds together on this, like because people are gonna body shame. We'll say like we'll just use body shaming as an example. When I saw Cash Cow, I was like, people are gonna body shame her because she's a bigger black woman, and then at the same time body shame me because I'm a really skinny white dude. If we bring us together, it's like a yin yang. We can have fun, make a fun track together, and maybe people can have like it and have fun, and enjoy it for, I don't know. That was kind of like one of those a message we tried to put in there, like,
Yeah. I think
everyone
that's a
there's
very positive message that's needed, man. And I applaud you for that, because I do see a lot of body shaming on the internet. And it's I feel like, it's really not fair. I have young daughters. And the fact that a lot of girls, have to deal with
oh
insecurity
yeah.
about as far as how they look. And it's we see this every advertiser is making it seem like, you're not enough, or you're not good enough.
You got to be perfect. And that's like the a bad message too that they send because I feel like everybody, every one of us, that's not just me, not it's like you, and everybody from my neighbors or anybody, we all have something special about us. Everybody has something different, you know what I'm saying? That it don't matter what you look like. I mean, I think with the internet now too, like anybody can be like old, we'll say use this as an example, old Hollywood, like you had to look a certain way. You have to be, like you said, a certain body fit. And now it's like you could be a bigger woman or a skinnier person or whatever you are. And if you're reaching people and making a positive impact on them, I think that's like the most important thing, you know? Like it shouldn't matter what you look like. It
Definitely.
does that make sense what I'm saying? Like
Most definitely.
instead of like judging like, oh, like this person, we'll say this is an example, like you got the perfect uh Arnold Schwarzenegger body, you are the only one that can influence people and make people feel good about themselves. But it's like, no, man, there can be the big 400-pound kid down the street that just has a good sense of humor that can make a positive impact on someone. Or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Danny Dollars, man, you got such a positive attitude. One of the things I really enjoy about you, though, is that you're a wrestling fan and you got this extreme championship wrestling, like, collaboration. Like, can you talk about that a little bit?
So you're talking about the Dollar Mania event we just did? Yes. Oh man. So that's gonna be an event that we plan to make bigger every year. This was the first one we just tested out this year. We had obviously Shane Douglas, which was so cool, man. Like I love wrestling, so that was a big thing. Um, Basically where we bring wrestling and music together. So like instead of like I've done a lot of shows where there'll be like 20 opening act rappers on a show. And it's like it just gets boring, you know, like no disrespect to anybody else, but people go to events to be entertained. So like if you're spending your hard-earned money like that you worked for, a lot of like it's a hard time out here for a lot of people. And sometimes people want to escape the reality of and through entertainment, like people escape reality through entertainment. So if you're working hard to make, $500 this week or whatever it is, we want to put on the best event that if people are going to come in and pay $10 or $15 of their hard-earned money, they're getting entertained on all aspects. So like we brought in a rock group, we brought in Detroit legend Stretch Money with and Valid, like like more street rap and or like hip hop, and then my goofy funny music, and then obviously we had like some entertaining aspects from wrestling, and Shane Douglas hosted. So that's what we really the goal is to try to just provide good entertainment with that, and we want to do it every year, and hope get bigger and bigger every year. This first one was great. I mean, it was so fun, man. Like I never had as much fun as a show at a show as I did there, man. Like I mean, we had a guy come through and act like the city. He was a professional wrestler. Like he was shutting us down and choke slam him through a table. So, like that's just the thing with that is we really want to just provide a really good event, affordable event for people to come through and the best of both worlds, music and wrestling. I think those are two great forms of entertainment.
Most definitely, man. Danny Dollars, man. I really appreciated talking to you today. What's next for you in your career?
Well, we got lots of music videos, man. We're filming music videos like every month. Singles. I'm working on this project called first, let me rewind. Next month I'm dropping a single with Bootleg from the Dayton Family. Which is cool because Dayton Family is another one. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they were some Flint, Michigan legends, like at one time they were signed with ICP, and then Bootleg, he's got songs with Breed, MC Breed. So it's like he's a legend in my eyes. So I got something with him dropping next month. But then my favorite thing I'm working on is with my buddy Flapjack Wilson. It's called The Hollywood Heartthrobs.
Mhm.
So we're basing it, uh, obviously the name's wrestling inspired. It's kind of like a arrogant, like arrogant wrestler, like that's how I always look at Danny Dollar as like a wrestler, a arrogant Shawn Michaels type, Rick Rude. So that's what we're trying to go with this Hollywood Heartthrobs, but we're rapping over like 80s style beats,
Oh,
like and 90s freestyle beats. So like Lil Susie, like Take Me in Your Arms and stuff like that. We sampled stuff like that. So and it's fun, man. Like it's a refreshing, still my stuff, still our Flapjack Wilson. It's